Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Hard to believe, but it won't be long, and ski season will be here. Today's guest is Steve Wright, the president and general manager of the JP Resort. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scotty. Nice to be here again.
Well, you haven't been on a while. I know in the past you've been on periodically to tell us what's up.
Well, yeah, like you said, on one hand, it feels like the season's almost upon us, and in a lot of other ways, it feels like it never ended. You know, we closed up shop right around March 11th or 12th, and it happened so quickly that we had no real opportunity to sort of say goodbye to the ski season. Right? We went from 14 or 1,500 employees on March 11th or 12th down to about 60 employees in 4 or 5 days. So it's been quite an experience for us, just like it has for everybody else within the community. And we're certainly looking forward to getting 2021 season underway.
That must have been quite a shock.
Yeah, I mean, we were really the first major resort in North America to shut it down. There were a few smaller resorts in Massachusetts that were pretty much at the end of their season as we got into the middle of March, and they shut it down. But we were the first resort who had quite a bit of season in front of us to make that decision. We still had 6 or 7 weeks to go before we traditionally would shut up or shut down operations. And a lot of that season historically was really good season for us. We had a lot of groups, a lot of big vacation periods. But we got to the point where we were trying to operate within the virus. We were trying to change operations, and we were trimming here and cutting there and eliminating here. And we got to the point where we said, what kind of experience are we really putting out there when we try to operate like that? And we really didn't have the ability or the knowledge at the time to keep our team members or our guests safe. So really, that was the most important part of this thing was shutting it down to keep folks safe.
Right. And with every passing day, you probably had new guidelines coming from the state and federal government.
Absolutely, and especially during the early stages of this thing, the government didn't have a real good handle on it. So as we shut down, those first few weeks after, those last few weeks in March, first week or so of April, we had guidance changing every day, and we got to the point where we took a step back and waited for that guidance to kind of align a little bit before we started to develop our own safety protocols up there.
Right. So how has the summer been for you?
We've with the border being closed, we lose 50 or 60% of our summer audience. 50 or 60% of our golf audience is generally comprised of the Canadian folks. So with that border being closed, we've seen a drop in golf rounds, with the state dropping our hotel occupancy down to 50% max. We've seen a drop in hotel visits, and with the state and developing its cross-county and cross-state maps, most of our destination audience on the U.S. side has been very limited as well. But within on the other side, within the last month, we've been able to open up the water park to a limited amount of folks. Our outdoor pool is open. The clubhouse grill, the restaurant is open, albeit with some limitations. So we've been trying to make do. We've been trying to bring in revenue where we can on the top end, and then manage labor and expenses so we can take some of that to the bottom line.
So, are you talking? What are you hearing from guests? Are they starting to get used to living in this new world where they're now starting to branch out and come back?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, we try to survey informally and formally just about everybody that comes on campus now, and I think for the most part, people are starting to get it, with the state going to mandatory mask use when you're within 6 feet. We've posted that information both before guests arrive and on campus while they're here, and for the most part, I'd say the overwhelming majority of the time, they're okay with that. There's certainly some folks who have a different opinion on what the wearing of masks means, besides just being safe. But for the most part, people put politics aside when they land on campus, and they do what's mandated by the state.
Right. Yeah, that's what I find. I find that that most people, even the ones who are skeptical of the masks, when they have to do it, they will do the right thing. So I'm glad to hear that. So what do you have planned for what does it look like for the coming season?
Well, we're in the process of building revenue budgets at this point for fiscal 21, and we're taking a super conservative approach to everything. We're making the assumption that the border is going to remain closed for a continued period. We're making assumptions that our destination markets are going to be limited in their ability to travel. And we're moving forward with that on the revenue side and the labor and expense side. If we're going to do a certain percent less on revenue, we have to make sure that we keep expenses and labor in check. At the same time, we want to get our people back to work. We laid off quite a few folks back in March. Like I said, we brought some of them back on to help manage the summer business. And as we get into winter, it's our hope that we can bring quite a few of them back. But it's going to be a different experience. We've got limitations from the state with indoor gatherings, so we've got to figure out what that means for our lodges. The ski and snowboard experience outside, when people are gloved and masked already, we think that there's very low risk to that, so long as you keep folks distanced prior to them getting on a chair. And when they're outside, making sure that they're not congregating in massive groups. And then we just need to be judicious about how we allow them to gather inside and work with the state, understand the guidance, and then execute inside. It's going to be a different experience, though, for sure.
So when you signed on to this many years ago and into the ski industry, and then in more recent years as the general manager, I bet you didn't look into the horizon and say, I bet you I'll be facing a global pandemic. That'll be one of my major concerns.
You would be right. I did not plan for that. But it's in this business, that's already subject to the vagaries of crazy weather, especially up here in the kingdom. You sort of get used to changing your plans on the fly. Obviously, nothing as historic as the pandemic, but we've sort of managed ourselves through the 9/11 tragedy. There were a lot of similar tones to that in the way that we thought that our audiences and our guests would kind of go away and that they wouldn't want to travel in light of that. We found that wasn't the case. So we think that this has, like I said, some similar tones to that, in that there's some concern about how much and when people are going to be willing to fly, certainly, and even whether or not they're willing to travel for non-essential travel. But we think as time goes by and therapeutics are developed and vaccines are developed and distributed, that tourism market will bounce back pretty quickly when that happens.
Right. Now I know you've become quite well known for personally creating snowy winters up there ever since you've become the general manager. What do you have in stake? What do you have planned for, talking with the snow gods about this coming winter?
Well, we could use it this year, if ever. This is the year that we need winter to pull through for us, and I would expect us to have a good snow winter like we usually do. We're still planning on making as much snow as we ever have. I know that there are some resorts that are considering managing how much snow they make, how much they groom, how many lifts they're planning on running. But all of that, from an operational perspective, is going to be business as usual for us, regardless of how many people that we see at the mountain. The snowmaking will continue at the same clip it historically has. The grooming will, and our lift operating schedule will be unchanged. So, but on the natural snow end, we're expecting big things again.
Does it help the fact that we live in a state that I won't say has been untouched by COVID-19, but it's way down? That must help somewhat to attract visitors to Jay and just Vermont in general.
Yeah, I think ultimately it will. I think ultimately, how our state has managed themselves through this crisis, ultimately will create a very attractive destination for for guests. The problem is right now that we're attractive, but there are, you know, heavy limitations put on the people that can come here and visit. So regardless of how much somebody may want to visit Vermont, there's a strong likelihood that they're coming from an area that would prohibit them from doing that. And really what we're seeing, you know, the biggest part of tourism that has seen some injury as a result of this pandemic is the lodging industry. You know, they're the only sector within tourism that's expected to enforce compliance on whether or not folks are traveling from, you know, what's considered a red state. I mean, you can drive into the state of Vermont, go to a gas station, go and eat lunch, go to get some ice cream, come up to the water park, and no one ever really asks you where you're from. You know, all they're doing is selling you services. The minute you try to check in to a hotel, though, you're expected to verify and validate that you're from a green county. So because of that, I think we've seen the infection rate stay low, but it also means that the hotel and the lodging sector has been hurt more than any other sector in tourism, at least.
Yeah, I know we're seasonal campers, and even though my grandchildren come to visit us every day is a new day when they come. They have to fill out, well, not they're only 2 and 4 years old, but their parents have to fill out, basically they haven't been in a COVID hot region.
Right, or they've complied with the 14-day quarantine or the 7-day plus a negative COVID test, you know, compliance language, and that's really what all of the beds and breakfasts and inns and hotels and any of these properties within the lodging sector and inside of Vermont tourism are feeling right now. You know, because it's, you know, you can be a restaurant and still generate some traffic with locals coming in and eating at your spot, but you don't see a lot of those same people that are staying in hotels locally. That's where that piece is missing.
So are you optimistic for the coming season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always, like we talked about before, if you're in the resort business, you're optimistic as a default setting, I think. I'm optimistic that whatever the state guidelines are, that we'll be able to navigate ourselves safely within, which is, again, the most important part is that we keep team members and guests safe. But I am optimistic that the product will be good. And I think that in many cases, I mean, you look at the water park right now, we're allowed 75 people at any one time inside the water park. That holds 900 people. So the experience that you're getting as a guest with only 75 people in that water park is a completely different experience. I mean, there are no lines, there's no waiting. You can get a table immediately. You know, you're doing laps on all the slides, you're doing laps on the flow rider. So it's a pretty good experience. You know?
Must be hoping they can bump up those numbers pretty quick.
Yeah, I think that we will. I think that you know, if Vermont continues down this path, I think that you'll see the state start to loosen up some of those inside gathering numbers. Right. But even if we do, even if that inside number goes to 150, 200, 250, I mean, you're still looking at a 75% reduction in capacity inside the water park alone, which is it's a really nice experience to go in there with that few people.
Right. The other thing is, I've been talking to some real estate people, and real estate is a hot commodity right now. That the properties are flying. Now, does the resort, do they buy? No, they sell condos, or is that another?
We don't have a real estate department ourselves anymore. We work with one up at the mountain, and they have seen. This has been the busiest summer for them in their history. It's a summer that feels a lot like winter volume, which is when they sell most of their units. We've been selling some units sight unseen, and I think you know, the reaction is similar to what happened in that post 9/11 environment, which is people from our destination markets want to get out of the cities. And really, what's extraordinary is we're seeing this amount of volume without any Canadian interest at all, because they can't get over here at this point to conclude a transaction.
Yeah, that's what I've been hearing from all the real estate people. I've actually said I think we're going to see, for good and bad, I think we're going to see a influx of people that might not be as large as the Back to the Land movement in the late 60s and early 70s that occurred here as suburbanites and city dwellers moved here. But I think, I personally think there's going to be a lot of new people, part-time and full-time, coming here.
Yeah, I agree with you, and we're seeing, we've done some interesting things at the mountain with these things called relocation vacation packages this summer, where you can buy 1 to 3 months worth of lodging, and all of them come with unlimited golf for the amount of time that you stay here.
Right.
So that has generated a lot of interest from people that have never been to Jay before, and there's an index of those people who are now looking at buying real estate. So, to your point, you're generating a lot of short-term interest that turns into more of a long-term experience for a lot of these people.
Now, talking about buying and selling, what about the resort? Do they have a purchaser yet?
No purchaser yet. I mean, we had quite a bit of interest leading into early March from a number of different folks who were looking at the resort, looking at the asset, had been here multiple times. We had started to talk, through some of the smaller details related to the sale, and then the pandemic hit. So I think everything has sort of been. We've hit pause on it, both from our interest in being aggressive about selling it right now, but also from potential buyers being interested in purchasing it right now. They've got other realities that they're dealing with, and I would suspect again that as vaccines and therapeutics are developed and we start to see travel pick up again, you'll see the sales pace pick up again.
So I've been following you on social media, and Jay, you folks haven't just been sitting back. It seems like your team has been, since you don't have a lot of people flooding the resort. It looks like you've been doing a lot of community work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've done two things. The first thing that we did really right after we closed was we said, listen, the first thing that we have to put together before we decide on what it is that we're going to operate and how we're going to operate, we need to develop a safety plan for how we were going to keep people safe. So we developed this, the Everclean project.
Right.
And that really is a set of core operating principles and protocols designed to keep employees safe, and to keep guests safe when they visited. So we spent 6 weeks developing a lot of that language. A lot of that is in place right now. And then when we felt good about how we were going to keep people safe, we started to develop a program called the Return, which was essentially an operational guideline of what we were going to open when and how we were going to open those pieces of business. And we're currently going through that. But one of the things that we realized pretty quickly, and that we challenged ourselves to do in the early stages of the pandemic, were where could we still help, right? We still had 50 or 60 employees that were still full-time year-round employees who were there to keep the campus safe and running, and to continue to plan for when we would open. So we said to ourselves, how can we put those folks to use, and where did the community really need us? And one of the areas, and I see this firsthand because I'm on the board of the Green Mountain Farm to School program as well, is the amount of food insecurity that we have in this area, not only in Newport, but in Troy, North Troy, Coventry, Jay, Montgomery, Lowell, that sort of thing. And we said, we had food in our coolers, and we had chefs on campus, and we said, how do we distribute this food to the food shelves? And then how do we take what's left and turn that into meals for folks in the area that needed them? We worked with the SASH program with Rural Edge, and now we're working with the NEK Council on Aging to develop, I think it's 250, 260 meals a week to go out to seniors who are experiencing food insecurity and really don't have the means to get out and get food. So we've made between 3,000 and 4,000 meals at this point, and we're still doing that on a weekly basis. And it just makes us, I always say this, that our employees, our team members are members of the community themselves. So they like to be able to participate in supporting the places that they live. So our food and beverage department, we had a lot of people raising their hands to come in and donate their time to do a lot of this.
I suspect, I've said this before, is I think we're going to learn a lot from this pandemic, and I think there's no taking away the fact about those 164,000 plus people who've died, but I think in the long run we might come out even better and better people as a result of it.
Yeah, I hope so. If I'm certainly the type that looks for whatever silver lining you can grab out of this entire thing. But there have been a lot of people. It's not just Jay Peak. We've done our part, but there have been tons of people in this community that have identified needs and then done what they could to fill those needs during this 3 or 4 month period. And I suspect that they'll find opportunities to do that into the future as well, because the need is still there. It always has been.
Right. Now, I don't believe this is directly related to the resort anymore, but anytime I mention Jay Peak, everybody wants to say, well, a lot of people, what about the hole on Main Street? You folks don't have anything to do with that.
No, in the periphery, because I work a lot with the state, especially on some of the restart guidelines relative to the pandemic, you hear things about what their plans are, because, they're sort of in conversations with Michael Goldberg about how to find, a suitable, tenant for that space. I don't really have any firsthand knowledge of what's happening in there, nor do I have an understanding of what's going on at the former ANC Bio building that I know they're trying to figure out a way to put a business in there. Like I said, I hear about some of the stuff in the periphery, but it's not, I have plenty to focus on up there with just trying to bring skiers at the mountain and try to work our way through this pandemic at this point, to be honest.
Yeah, because everything, a lot of people who haven't been to the resort, because there's actually a lot of people that have never been there, and local people. It's a whole city, and it's like your I don't know. I guess it's like how many people do you have there on a given busy day before the pandemic?
Before the pandemic, a busy ski day for us would be about 5,000 skiers, right? And then on top of that, you've got another 1,500 employees who are working that particular day, and you may have some folks that are there who are not technically skiers. They're either water parkers, or they're there to lodge or a conference or a wedding. So you could have 7,000-8,000 people there.
So you basically are overseeing a community, probably about 3,000 more people than the city of Newport.
Yeah, certainly not me myself. I barely have the wherewithal to manage myself. So it's good that we have a great staff up there. But yeah, on a busy Saturday and a pretty typical snowy Saturday where we have 100% lodging occupancy, yeah, there can be 7,000-8,000 people up there.
Yeah, and I suspect that, as you were, I think, saying before, is because of the pandemic, there might be new people. You're going to lose those Canadians for a bit, but you're going to gain. I think you'll gain some new people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We lose for a period of time 50% of our historical audience, but we feel that a lot of these U.S. skiers and snowboarders who typically would go west for a vacation, right, or fly north to Canada because of the dollar, who can't do that now and maybe aren't inclined to do that when we're talking about Colorado or Utah or California, those skiers will still be activated in our local market. And there will be opportunities to get them to possibly either experience Jay for the first time, or to maybe spend an extra day or two, right, on where typically they may only spend a couple.
Right. Well, I was just talking to a fellow that I'm sure you know, and I was asking, how did you get involved in the Jay community? And he said it was by chance. They were going to Canada to a resort there, and this is back in the 70s, 80s, and they got detoured towards Jay as Sven.
Yeah.
Sven
Saw
Cruz.
him a few weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, and he was just saying it was a chance encounter.
Yeah.
Derailed his derailed his plans, and he ended up in J, and then they ended up buying the NEK, and
Yeah.
they've been active members of the J community, and that was just by chance, and this might also bring people here by chance.
Yeah, I mean, typically you hear that story a lot, right? That somebody is down and they're skiing at a different area, Smugs, Stowe area, and the weather turns bad. There may be some rain, and they decide, what the hell, we'll go to Jay for a day, see what's happening. As they head out, they start to head up to the mountain. At some point, rain turns to snow, and then it's snowing like crazy at the mountain, and they say to themselves, "Wow, is this what typically happens at Jay Peak when it's raining at other places?" Now, certainly it doesn't happen all the time, but more often than not, it can be raining as close as half an hour away, and by the time you get to our elevation, it turns to snow, and that sticks with people. We both heard lots of stories of that being what drives people to become Jay Peakers.
Yeah, the J cloud.
Right.
But you have done very well at harnessing the cloud and just bringing it in over the mountain.
Well, we don't. We have plenty of people there that have been there longer than I have that also have a direct connection, what it seems to them, and they generally will come into my office, and when the weather report is looking bad, they'll take a look at things, and they'll look out the window and they'll see how things are moving, and they'll say, "Don't be surprised if it stays white for us," and more often than not, they're right.
Just think, decades later, one of the founders, one of the original board members is still alive after so many decades, Andy Pepin.
That's right.
If Andy Pepin had not been a lawyer, he could have been a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Because Andy can tell jokes all day long, and he's still proud of what he and the other founders helped build.
Yeah, he still has. He's got his name on a few of the different assets that we have up there, and he's definitely a major part of our history. And you've been up there telling your stories before, and Andy's a big part of that.
Yeah. Okay, a couple more minutes. What are your final words to the listeners?
Well, I would say first and foremost, stay safe and hang in there. There's certainly a hell of a lot more important things than skiing and snowboarding and water parking. And right now, it's making sure that you stay safe with your families, get your kids to school safely, and figure out that whole piece. I mean, thankfully, my daughters are a little bit older, and I don't have to figure out this at-home and remote learning piece right now, which I have a lot of empathy for folks who are trying to struggle and work and find out daycare solutions and still get their kids taught. I mean, it's a tough puzzle to figure out. So first and foremost, it's I wish them all the luck in the world with that. And then I would say, to those folks who are looking to get outside and to safely recreate, that there will be options. At Jay Peak, we will have more affordable options for locals this year than we've ever have, to try to recognize the fact that there's some time available for locals that maybe they haven't had before because of whatever their job situation may be, whether it's remote or not, or whether the kids are in school or they're remote or not, so that at some point when they're able to get out, that they'll be able to do and recreate safely up at Jay. And we look forward to things maybe not getting back to normal, but looking a little bit differently, but having that really not impact the experience at all.
Right. Okay. Thanks for coming on. And if you have any more messages you want to convey, just hit me up, and we'll have you back on, because Jay Peak has been a huge part of our community for now generations, and hopefully you're here for generations to come.
Thanks, Scotty. Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks,
and
Scott.
Thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.